What up, friends? How are you guys? Welcome back to the Global Game Jam. I'm F. Tom. Depends on where you're seeing me. This is Ashley, and she is repping the world of
Hi.
Unity, which I'm sure everybody knows. You a little bit less so. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Ashley Alicea. I work as a developer advocate for games at Unity. And essentially, what that means is I'm kind of like a professional Unity geek who gets to go to game jams and hackathons and all these events and talk about Unity features, how to use them effectively for these events or for the games that you're making at home during your day jobs or maybe your side jobs. I'm really excited to be here. This is my 12th year participating in Global Game Jam. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome that you're here, and it's cool. I think when it comes down to engines and the nitty gritty of game design, it doesn't always get the fanfare and the love that some of the other elements do. But at the end of the day, I mean, without the backbone, you don't got the game. So I think it's really important that you guys come out here and do that sort of thing.
No, of course. And it's like, it's for me, like that nitty gritty part is the fun part. And we have such an awesome, dedicated, passionate community that it's always fun. Yeah.
You mentioned that you've been to 12 global game jams. I think you said that's a
Yes.
lot. Talk to me about. Let's start at the first one. What was your first one like?
The first one I went to was in 2010, I think, and this was at the Rochester Institute of Technology. They had a jam site in their amazing campus. I was not even a game developer. I was studying zoology and I loved video games. I was always a gamer, but someone told me, hey, we're going to go to this global game jam thing and you know how to draw. Can you come help us and just make art for our game? And I'm like, a game jam? I don't understand. Like, what is this? I don't know. And so I went, and then it just blew my mind. The concept of like one, being able to make a video game. I didn't think that someone like me could do that, right? And then two, the idea that not only was I with this like amazing group of like what 50 people making games, but that we were doing it at the same time with people from all over the world. Like, and to
Mm.
me, that was like the gateway. That was the hook. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to do zoology anymore. I changed my studies. I studied computer science and game development, and I became a game developer. So Global Game Jam is a huge reason why I'm a game developer today. But yeah, that jam was amazing. It was like sleeping bags on the floor. Nobody slept. Don't do that. Please sleep. But the theme was deception. And we made a game about a mime world where you had to essentially kill the other mimes to restore color back into the world. It was like really some edgy young college kid stuff, but we had fun. It was fun. So that was my first global game jam.
That's the key. I mean, a lot of fun here for sure. But you mentioned something that I want to take and run with. You mentioned, somebody like me can't make games. And I think like, I love that was, well, I don't love that was your initial, like, thought process, obviously, but how quickly, that changed once you kind of, like, hit the ground running.
Yeah, and I just want to disagree with you. I'm sorry, but you can't make games. And like anyone who sits and thinks I like someone like me can't make games, that's completely normal and a very, very common
Exactly.
assumption. And that's like all game developers go through that. No, like especially kind of in our generation where having a career in game development is also like a pretty new concept, right? Our parents didn't want to be game
Hmm.
developers. And for many of us, they're, when we want to do that, they're like, what is that? Is that like a thing you can do? And but it's everyone can contribute to game development, whether you're an artist, whether you work in audio, whether you are a programmer, you're a writer. So many people of so many different talents can contribute to video games. And I didn't really understand the depth of this until I got into the industry. But some of my colleagues, right, in the real world, that when we're working on game projects together, they didn't study game development. They worked in
Oh, yeah.
architecture. They worked in TV. They worked in cinema. They worked from all over. And so I just really hope that people don't feel discouraged if they haven't made a game before. And in my opinion, Global Game Jam is the perfect place to make your first game. It's where I made my first game.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, it was an amazing experience. It's hard. You have to like learn, and you're learning about all this new tools and stuff like Unity, right? If you've never used them before, it can be kind of intimidating a little bit. But I think the best part about Global Game Jam is that not only in your local jam site, but throughout the world, you have a huge, massive community of people who want to help
Oh
you and
yeah.
who want to see you succeed and to who want they want to see you make an awesome game, right? So I think this is kind of one of the best places ever to make your first ever game. And so I'm excited to see what's going to come out this year, honestly.
Yeah, it's it's whenever you walk into the world of like art, people are like naturally passionate, and games is the like intersection of art and technology, and it's emerging as well. New things and artsy things people like get really crazy about, and like
Yep.
you said, here we are. So you have rabid communities, whether Discord, Reddit, Global Game Jam here, Twitch, Twitter, etc. There's always somebody that wants to talk to you about, like, oh, do you have an issue with this? Go to GitHub. I fixed it. I did it on my own. And like somebody so like you have all these, I'm sure you've kind of like interacted there, but Global Game Jam is so different because like it's specifically the sort of like coming together of the minds. And I work at
Yep.
esports, and that's the big conventions are always fun, but specifically here, it's not just gaming as a whole, it's specifically like the designers and developers mindsets, and being in this sort of environment, not just as a new person like we kind of talked about, but even as you've been inundated, you've gone to 10 plus and you're still coming because there's something for everybody along the ride.
Absolutely. And in each different jam, I haven't done the same thing. Like, I started in the industry as an artist. My first global game jam, I made art. Now I'm a programmer and now I focus on the programming side. But I've also done production and other types of development. And it's again, like you said, like so many things you could do, so many different kind of skill sets and genres combined for this like one creation event.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that's really, you mentioned your colleagues come from a lot of different backgrounds. I worked at a pretty decent sized studio down in Atlanta, and the design team was a math major, a philosophy major. I never went to college. I did rock music and rap music instead. A theology major, and one guy that spent one semester in game design school. And like,
That sounds like
and
an
also
amazing crew.
yeah, and it was awesome. And I want to give a shout out to my friend Tina. She's a senior game designer now. She has a background in art history, and so the game we worked
Yeah.
on was a mythology based like MOBA. And so art history gave us like, okay, if we're going to talk about Zeus, we're really going to do it right. Here she is. Theology and philosophy made like games are a multi-disciplined. When you're making an album, it's all music. Maybe you have some sort of visual art for the cover, but it's all just music, right? It's more like putting on like a musical or a movie where there's so many different talents combining. So the Global Game Jam, talking to some of the creative people yesterday, I really kind of found like your niche is here. Like whatever it is, if you're really good
Yeah.
at like knowing how insect exoskeletons work, there's a rigger out there that really wants to talk to you.
Yep.
And I
On the
think that's so
nose.
much fun.
It is, and and a lot of these global game jam events are held in colleges, right? And so, and us this year, we're doing it virtually, and so I think there's even more interesting kind of cross pollination of people going to different jam sites. But when they were in person, bringing people in from like other departments, even if they like aren't interested, don't work at games at all. Like I remember for one global game jam, we were like grabbing people in the biology department, like you're saying, right? Like about this like very specific natural thing, like how do we do it in a video game? So absolutely.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun, kind of seeing what kind of and the game jam. Again, we as designers and developers in this world of dollars and donuts, the game jam is also kind of like a reprieve from. I don't have to worry about new players coming in, the new players. I'm just going to make the game that we want to make, and that's really kind of like liberating as a designer or like a creative in general.
It is absolutely. I mean, it's like not having that pressure and also being able to just do something different than the day to day, right? Because every day, right, I spend my day in front of Unity and I make my different projects and I love it. But these are long term projects and they take a lot of my time. But then at Global Game Jam, I get to look at Unity, but I get to see it a whole different way. And I get to work with
Hmm.
people and make projects that I would never make or projects that I could never do on my own or with the resources I have. And so it's this opportunity to really, I don't know, like just like get creative and like you said, like it's a reprieve. Like it's just like cathartic almost to start the year with just like I get to spend a weekend, toss everything out of my brain, and just have some fun with some friends and make our experience, make our game.
And it's you talk about like these when you talk about like these corporate retreats for people that have like regular jobs, quote unquote, they come back energized with new ways to look at their job, and that's literally what we're able to do here, right? We're painters, and now we're throwing paint at the wall, and all of a sudden we see a new interaction with colors, and there you go, like we've got something new. And I think that's fun to kind of draw on and go with. You mentioned working with Unity all the time and seeing this other side. What are kind of the more esoteric things in your time of coming to Global Game Jam, Unity or otherwise, that you've seen kind of at the Global Game Jam that you might not have seen in a boardroom, so to speak?
I gotta think. That's a good question. I think for me, it's like the differences is that I like at my day job, I'm using like maybe new, like a lot of things what I focus on, for example, are talking about the new features of Unity or helping people dive in or learn about like upcoming tools. And during Global Game Jam, I get to strengthen my skills and really look at kind of like the core features of the editor and
Mm-hmm.
spend more time with them and like really learn more deeply. And for me, it's about like I get to focus on strengthening my skills as a game developer. I think that I also the like creative like the creativity involved, like I don't have to get approvals to make anything on this game, right? Like I
That's
can
the
just I
yes.
as long as my team buys in and we can all agree by sitting next to each other and just discussing it in a 10-minute conversation, we can go ahead and do it, right? And so I love that liberating feeling. Like you're saying, it is kind of like that, just like running and going with it. You have 48 hours in Global Game Jam to finish your game. You don't have a lot of time to like deliberate or do too many things. Like it's so important to set aside time during the jam to plan out and like do everything you're going to do. But like, in the real world, right? Nothing gets planned that quickly. It's a much more extensive approval
Yeah.
process. So that's kind of like a fun difference. And then it's also just being able to work with like new people with different skill sets that which also push your skill sets in a different direction. Or maybe your team really wants to make something and you've never done that before. You could be an experienced programmer, but if you spend all your time making RPG games, right, and your team comes in and says like we want to make a action puzzle game, then that's a whole different mind shift that you have to do sometimes. So it gets pretty interesting.
I like the idea of like a little bit of planning, but at the end of the day, the freedom. If I never have to hear we have to wait for animation again, I'm totally fine with that. So the Global Game Jam, like squashes it. You don't have to worry about the different departments, and that's kind of fun. But I've got a chance to kind of look at some of the games that we've seen that people are working on right now, and of course, the big successes that we've seen. My favorite thing, especially when we're talking about like engines like Unity, is sort of like unique approaches to like mechanics and stuff. Like earlier on, we had Projection First Light, Chewy, who is doing, the whole gimmick was like shadows and like light sources. And so you could move the light source and stuff like that. I love the exploration of new mechanics, especially here where we talk about like, no, sort of like, will somebody actually play this? You don't have to sell it. You just got to do it. Have you like come across any games that are really like in your memory from Game Jam times?
From Game Jam times, oh my God, there's so many. You know what? This is such I feel it's not even silly. Like I love it. I will always remember this game because I watched the crowd of people around. Like everyone was like crying with laughter. There was a game at NYU Game Center. I want to say in 2016 or 15, and it was about. I forget the name of that movie with Gene Wilder and Richard Price, where one can't hear and one can't see, and so
Okay.
it was based off of that movie essentially, and it was a VR game where one person is able to hold the controls like and actually see like the steering wheel of a car, whereas the other person has to stand behind the person with the VR headset, hold their shoulders because on the television screen that they're looking at, they actually see the road with the cars. So then the way you play is
Oh,
that one person turns the steering wheel while your friend holding your shoulders kind of like leans you left and right to be able to tell you where to go and how to avoid the cars, but you can't talk. Oh my God, that game was so
I
funny.
I actually vaguely remember this. I used to go. I'm from New York originally. I used to go to Zenith, Super Smash Bros. Tournament at NYU Game
Yeah.
Center. I remember. Yeah, yeah. See no evil, hear no evil. That's the movie's name. I remember that
Yes,
one.
that's
Yeah,
what it is.
but but I
It was
actually vaguely
hilarious.
remember that. Yeah, I remember like everybody was talking about it. I remember going to like the Smash tournament and people were like, "Yeah, these guys, because it was in the game center, and so similar conversation,
Hmm.
small game worlds for sure. We're all used to them, right? So
Yeah.
really fun stuff. That's the exciting stuff that we get to see out of game jams and stuff like this. And you are you on the ground? Are you on a team this year game jamming? Or are you just here as your product evangelist Unity person?
So this year, I'm actually really aiming to be part of a team. So the jam site that I'm going to be attending at USC Game Center in Los Angeles, California, they have not begun yet. They begin at 5 p.m. Los Angeles time today. So right after this, I'm preparing to go jump in and start my global game jam. And
Ooh.
so usually every year. So right now, what Unity is doing for Global Game Jam is that we have these resources in such as on our website, but we also have a Discord, and we've actually made special channels on our Discord server to help people who are participating in Global Game Jam. So if anyone here is watching and you're working with Unity and you have any questions or something comes up, you can jump on the Discord, because that's where myself and several of my other colleagues are going to be spending our time during the jam. So half the jam, I'm going to be on the Discord helping answer people's questions about Unity. And then the other half of the jam, I'm going to be kind of like contributing and participating where I can at my local jam site as well. So, but my goal, I really hope that time wise it works out and I'm able to kind of like really help with one of the games, because that to me is like always the best result.
That's awesome that you get to kind of, do both. A lot of times you gotta kind of leave it behind to elevate, but okay, you're doing both. That's sick. So you've got about 2.5 hours until you start. Right, right, right. Let's, let's just boil it down. Forget the whole interview. What does it look like starting for Ashley? What does this look like? You're getting ready to join the game jam. It's gonna be 48 hours. What do you do? How you preparing?
I always practice, and it sounds silly, right? But it's there, like, I, and the theme was announced already, right? So the theme of Global Game Jam is Lost and Found. And so
Mm-hmm.
I try my best not to think about it until I get to like the jam site, right? But I'm thinking about, okay, what are like the most common tools I might use? So I know, for example, 2D games are very popular and common at Global Game Jam. I make sure that I'm brushed up on Unity's 2D tools, because Unity has a lot of features. Like, and now there I go geeking out about Unity, but I really love this. That instead of, for example, creating a 2D game where you have to like place all your art and do everything manually, we have tools where you can just like quickly paint it out and then like just throw in your art. And for me, like I'm trying to think about how can I save time? What features can I learn that will really allow me to focus on making my game fun and less about, oh my god, I'm trying to make my game but I don't know what to do, like what do I need to implement or whatever. So I brush up on features I think are most likely or most commonly be used. I think about like past global game jams and games I've seen, and once in past other game jams events, right? You don't know the theme until you're like through the doors and you're there in person,
Yeah.
and so that's always harder because then you have no idea what's going to happen. So this year's a little bit kind of easier, but then you go in. Inevitably, this always happens. You walk in, you're like, all right, I'm ready, and then they announce the theme, and you're like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. Like I remember one year the theme was just an audio file that was a sound of a heartbeat, and I was like, whoa, this was but this was not what I expected. Okay, I got to think about this. And so then inevitably when the start of the jam begins, it's like really trying to understand how you can
What
do justice
you
to that theme.
what you
Go
wind up
ahead.
doing for the heartbeat one?
I don't remember. I think it was a game about a baby. I remember that
Okay.
year I think I was just helping out with different games versus just making one of my own. And so I don't remember specifically. And then, but yeah, no. So for the jams when I'm preparing, it's like the themes for Global Game Jam are always amazing. They have an incredible theme committee. So doing justice to that theme, and also the diversifiers that they add for Global Game Jam. And that's something I've been thinking a lot about this year too, because Unity is actually one of the sponsors for one of the diversifiers for Global Game Jam. And our
Right.
diversifier is Destination Happy Place. And so for us, we really wanted to contribute a diversifier that really added another layer of respite to the jam, kind of like how we were talking about earlier, right? Like it's like that like cleansing, like new experience in the jam. But we were thinking, like in reality, we could all really use a cleansing experience from this pandemic and from everything going on in the world. And so we were just thinking like what would we want to do if the pandemic, right, wasn't a thing or wasn't happening? And it's like, okay, we want to be in our happy place. And then for me, like it's my happy place is like Global Game Jam, like being in this environment, like that's what it means to me. So it's like a weirdly ironic full circle thing. But it's when I'm starting the jam, I'm thinking about, all right, how do I implement the theme? How do I implement some diversifiers in like unique and interesting ways? Because I think one of my favorite things about the jam is to play a game, and you can see when you play a game on the website, people mark which obviously the theme's the same, but which diversifiers they use, and seeing how other people interpret it is always
That's the
fantastic.
fun
So it's
part.
like, yeah. So just seeing like, somebody, there was a theme about, or like a diversifier about, let's say, accessibility, and you might see people creating like one button games or games that address color blindness, or there's other themes that like, you can have one person making a game about Antarctica and then someone else making a game about ants that live in a jungle somewhere, right? It's like one theme can be interpreted in so many different ways, and especially because
Oh
Global
yeah.
Game Jam is cultural, like everyone's different culture and countries and backgrounds just make it such a broad, diverse experience that it's always really kind of fun and rewarding to see like how everyone approached the themes.
So that's why I asked you about the heartbeat one, because yesterday on camera I was talking to somebody that brought that one up, and then off camera I was talking to somebody that brought it up, and two very different examples. One person, like you said, audio file, all you heard was a heartbeat. One person made a love story, the other person made an echolocation based game where the heartbeat
See,
would like allow you to
exactly.
see in the dark, like completely different. And that's the beauty of the medium, I think, is like,
Yes.
again, coming back to like looking at traditional art, it's just such a collage of different mediums, and like you said, cultures, which I think is always super super interesting. Anytime you talk art, you're going to be mixing cultures, because art is the human language, right? We all can recognize beauty, whether it's in English, Spanish, or Persian. And so at the end of the day, like, I love that sort of like cross culturalism. We had Chewy here yesterday talking about his game, where the protagonist kind of walks through a couple of different stories, one from like 18th century England, one from India, one from Southeast Asia as well, and like that
Nice.
sort of like walk through. That's so cool. What are your experiences looking at like some of the cross cultural stuff here at Game Jam? What are some experiences speaking in that arena?
I think it's interesting because it's like one thing I think about is I remember another Global Game Jam theme that happened a couple years ago that was I'm gonna butcher it, forgive me, but it was something like we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are, I think. And
Yes, that's
so
what it was.
okay, and so the it's so interesting how people took that with completely different contexts based on the country that they were in. And I remember being in like, on Twitter and talking to folks, and someone's like, it means this, and someone's like, no, it means this other thing. And so and like, even if the words are there and very literal, right, it's so subjective, like you're saying, like based on the cultures, and people ended up interpreting it in their own ways, and it was really fantastic. I think also that another thing I like is that you also see like, and this like depends, right? Because you're gonna have some people who are gonna make like a very generic or standard looking like city, for example, or an environment in their game. But oftentimes, sometimes I'll see is that the games look like the places where they're from, And so I'm from Puerto Rico originally, and I remember I did a global game jam there, and then we had like a bunch of game jam games that were like on the beach and stuff. And so, and then you go to like New York City, and there's a game about like not getting hit by a taxi, right? It's like very like regional taste in the games, and so it's I love that as well. It's almost like getting like kind of like visiting sometimes another country, like
Yeah.
as much as one can, but through art and through games. And it's really, really fun, and it makes you think a lot, on how other people perceive the things that you're thinking about.
Yeah, because what I enjoy is it's really fun, kind of looking at the literal application of different cultures, like you talked about, setting and stuff like that, but also just like an artistic kind of way. Like Torin came out a couple of years ago from a Brazilian studio and was like remarkably, like very unmistakably Brazilian with respects to like the color palette they used and like how they told the story, as opposed to like traditional American media. You could tell, and like that is so interesting. Again, sort of like exploring what our medium can kind of do on that artistic side, and bringing it back like full circle with the technology. Seeing like earlier today we had who was it? It was Side Effects who came through, and or NextNav who was talking about like location stuff like this, and like all of a sudden, as new technology comes forward, you can like create new games. So year after year, games that you made in 2010 versus games that you're making at the Global Game Jam in 2019 are so very different versus 2021. Yeah. And so, what do you think is the next? Sort of chapter? What's the next big hit for Game Jam games to be able to move into that direction? What's the next big technology spin, you think?
Interesting. I think that, of course, there's a lot of folks who are going to be interested in, and there are some limitations, right? But like making games for like next gen consoles. I think a lot of people are becoming very interested in cross-platform games. So being able, like, and I've been, for example, getting more questions about this at things like game jams and hackathons, where it's like, okay, for our game, we want to make, we want it to work on the phones, but we also want it to work on the computer. And like, how do we link it up? So there's a lot more interest in creating these cross-platform experiences. Definitely a lot of like, kind of like almost like the fast casual mobile game type. But in terms of like new and tech, I think I'm not sure, especially in the context of Global Game Jam. It's I see people cross platform, like people using also like different controllers and inputs and honestly a lot of like yeah, because honestly, because the way this is how it is for me, I think about like what's like the new and like brand new features and like new things that you could do in the context of like a game engine, but right. A player wouldn't necessarily see that technique. They're just still playing the game on their computer or their phone. So I'm thinking of like these different features and such that are going to make developers' lives a lot easier, that let them make their games a lot more quickly, that let them manage and operate their games more efficiently. But it's going to be kind of a similar end experience for the player, unless you're trying to do something really new with like a platform or something, let's say.
Well, I mean, even that totally counts, because now we're talking about like breadth and scale of the game, right? In 2010, I had to jump over all these hurdles and do all these things manually, like you said, like even something like putting in art where you can just kind of like paintbrush in and pop it in with Unity. Beforehand, I had to manually put all that in. So maybe I have, I want to make a Mario clone. I have 2 levels, as opposed to now in 2010. I can do 100 in 48 hours, right? Like that's a very different world. And so I think that's what makes Global Game Jam cool, is because like we're always thinking about the end user when we make software, of course, but like we don't have to at a game jam. Like if the player can't understand, well, I get it, I like it. And I think that's, we get to think from our perspective a little bit more, in the game developer. And then when we go home, we'll figure out how to make it all work and marry it together. But coming from Unity, I mean, like you said, developer front platform, what we can do here with the engine and stuff. And so are there any tips, people working on Unity, any like, hot button tips, bullet points that you have right off the bat? You're working Unity and Game Jam. What do you tell the people?
I actually literally made a video about this, and I posted it like last week, just because everyone asked me every Global Game Jam, and I'm like, I want to make this a quick guide for y'all. So if you go to Unity's YouTube, I actually have it. It's like If you go to their videos tab, you'll see a video called Global Game Jam Resources for 2021. There I talk about really the number one thing I see people do in Unity, even experienced Unity developers, is that they're building systems from scratch. They're building a camera system from scratch, let's say. They're building a 2D tiling system from scratch. But Unity has these features and you can add them. They're production ready. You can add them to your project, and then just half the time that you're spending making all these level design tools or whatnot for your game, when you can use these pre-existing systems, do what you need to do, and then move on and add more things to your game or more elements. So inevitably it happens every jam, and I'm like, dude, like, use this, save time. And so, but I get it, right? Because part of it, a lot of it is that you want to make it from scratch, right? You want to like really be like, okay, this is everything I was able to accomplish. But like, don't hurt yourselves. Like, it's don't like crunch, don't break your back. Like, this is a fun experience that we're having like with each other, and there's no need to reinvent the wheel. If the tools are available to you, you can use them, and it's completely okay, and we encourage y'all to do that.
Yeah, no,
I have to say, by the way,
go ahead.
I really want to say this quickly because someone mentioned it in the chat. So somebody is from Brazil, and they're asking about game dev tips, and so I hope this helps, and I hope the video helps. But I also want to mention, they say, I love games, I love game design, but my friends never do any game jams with me, and I'm sad. But okay, I want to say this. I went to my first global game jam with my friends, but I went to others where I didn't have any friends who came with me. And I left the jam with a ton of friends. And that's another amazing thing. So please don't ever feel like you can't come to Global Game Jam or do one of these events without having your friends join you, because this is one of the best places to meet new people, create lifelong friendships, and have fun. And it's always really great. Every year after you go, you make more and more friends. You see what your friends from last year are doing. And it's such an amazing experience. So person in chat, I hope that helps. And don't be shy.
Yeah, no, not at all. I can, anytime you're getting together for like a passion, right? Whether it's, game jam, esports, if you're going to a painting convention, right? You're just going to find friends because you're there for like-minded reasons. Everybody coming to the Global Game Jam has the same idea. And so your friends right now might not be into it, but the friends you make inevitably certainly will. So I think it's a lot of fun. Global Game Jam, even online, I've got a chance to meet new people, make new friends. Again, even though it's online, we're still doing it. And I think that speaks a lot to the medium. But, kind of last licks here, any resources you want to point out, anything specific you want to bring attention to before we let you go and get the game jamming?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are a Unity developer and you have a question or you need some help, check out the Unity Discord, and we actually have a link to it over on our Global Game Jam resources page on our website. So if you go to globalgamejam2021.unity.com, there you'll find a page with a link to our forums, our Discord, everywhere that you can go if you need some help, but also a whole list of different tutorials and resources to quickly teach you about these time-saving features that I'm talking to you about. So that way you can just, if you're stuck and you don't know how to use something, go to that page, find a tutorial, watch it fast, go back and work on your game. So we hope those resources help. We hope, jumping on Discord, we can be of help, and maybe I'll see some of y'all there. But if not, it was great hanging out with everyone here, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Unity is absurdly lucky to have somebody as passionate and as eloquent as you on their side, because I want to go rock some Unity now. So thank you so much for your time and hanging out. I wish you luck. Like I said, about 2 hours before you start your own jam. So hope you lost and find your success there. But good luck for sure. One more time, Ashley from Unity. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Cheers, everyone. All right, take care. Bye.